I'd like to welcome everyone to the Agile Coaching Exchange in this month. This is February 2021. As I've said many times, I wish these were different circumstances, but it's really, really good to be able to connect in this remote forum that we have. I'm really, really pleased to see so many of you, and I'm also really, really pleased to bring our speakers tonight. Before I do that, I just want to say a really, really grateful thank you to Simon Machin from TFE Consulting, who's sponsoring us through providing our big Zoom account for this event. And for those that are new to us, we do these every month now, and a few little offshoot events here and there. We get people connected from all over, and it's just really, really good to have such a far reach. So on to our speakers tonight. Tonight we're bringing Kwasi, Owusu-Asomaning and Satvinder Nota, who are coaches that I'm really, really pleased to have worked alongside in the last 18 months or so. I've worked a lot more closely with Satvinder in the last year or so. I've really, really appreciated working with Sati. I really like her presence when we're in a coaching situation. And I've also worked with Kwasi in some very interesting kind of community sessions with a group of coaches, and I really like his calmness and resolve in some of those what could be quite stressful situations, as you know what it can be like when you get a load of coaches together. So I'm really, really pleased to get them together tonight and for them to have this this subject. So I really hope they'll be well received, and I'd like us to have a kind of a virtual applause or a warm welcome for Kwasi and Satvinder. So cheers, over to you guys.
Thank you, Ben, for your very lovely, kind words and brilliant welcome. Thank you very much. So Kwasi and I have got a great hour planned for you. We're going to be exploring roles. Ben did mention that he's hit the record button. So everything that we do together in this main room will be recorded, but when we're in the breakout sessions, that's entirely your space. That will not be recorded. Therefore, we ask you to uphold any confidentiality as well, any kind of exploration that happens within those breakout sessions. So Kwasi and I are both system workers, and we're going to be playing a little bit in that space. So sometimes it might feel quite intimate, personal, might feel quite deep sometimes, as we treat you as an individual, as a system. And then actually when we start to explore team dynamics, we'll be playing in that space. And sometimes we're really going to zoom out and include some rather large things as well that are happening out there in terms of global matters. We'll be focusing largely on how we are being in this hour. So when I think about the Agile Manifesto, I'm thinking the individual's interactions over processes and tools. So how do we interact with each other? And how do we interact to start to get the best out from each other and start to really build up that collective intelligence? And as Kwasi and I were reflecting on this, we were thinking that quite often what I've heard when I've been with Agile teams is that we talk about software development really belonging in that complex domain. And yes, agree, and people work together and find solutions. What really interests me is actually when you get the people working together and treating them as complex people and actually starting to see what do those dynamics look like. And that's the area that it really intrigues me. We will be focusing on an ORS skill around roles and how to share roles in a system. We're focusing mainly on Agile and Scrum, but actually you could apply this in any context in life. So you could apply this in your home life with your friendships, any communities that you might be part of. What does roles look like in those places as well? But for today, we're going to be looking at Scrum teams specifically. So the work is largely based on Arnold Mindel's work, but actually there's much larger, wider psychology that's been done out there when we start to look at roles and how people show up. We will have time for questions. We'll be debriefing, but of course at the very end of the session, there will be time for questions at that point as well. Okay, Kwasi, I'm just going to invite you in for a moment before we move on, just to see if you want to say anything more.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say thank you for having us. We are very excited to be in your presence and to be with you. So thank you, and we're looking forward to this hour we've got together. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Did anybody get curious about the quote that we had on the abstract? Culture does not make people, people make culture. By all means, you can come off mute or you can share something in the chat if you fancy. Okay, so I
think from that point of view, sorry, yeah, I completely agree. You know, culture is derived by the people, not the other way around.
Lovely, lovely, thank you. Anyone else want to share?
I'd say yes, and I think there's a bit of a circle in there, there's a bit of a loop, but absolutely start with people. People make culture. However, the environment in which people work will influence people and their behaviors. So it does go around.
Wow, we're in great company tonight. So yes, absolutely. This idea, actually, the quote was taken from a lady called Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and it's taken from a TED talk that she did. I've got the transcript here. There we go. And the name of the TED talk is "We Should All Be Feminists." So there's a poke at a system, right? And actually, what she talks about is her experience as a Nigerian woman, and the culture and the way that culture had influenced her and her upbringing and her womanhood. And then actually, she talks about how she is really owning that space and using her agency to start to influence a culture that she wants to be part of and that she wants to create. And she's really acknowledging the kind of the gender stereotypes of men and women, and actually how we can start to shift some of those. So when I read that and when I saw the TED Talk, I was like, wow, that statement, that really sticks with so many different things. Okay. Okay, so to get you warmed up a little bit, we're going to do a bit of tribes work. Okay, so within this hour, we're going to ask you to have a come from place, which we call a meta skill. And the come from place that we would like you to come from, and also me, Kwasi, will uphold this as well as best we can, is openness and playfulness. Okay, so that's what we would like to create today with you all. So when we think about openness, we're thinking of opening our minds, opening our hearts, and also possibly being open to doing something new as well. And that's what today's exploration will be about. And playfulness, so when sometimes things get edgy, they might feel a little bit uncomfortable. And so sometimes if we put a bit of playfulness in that space, then actually it can take the edge off things and we feel a little bit more freer just to do something we might not normally do. Okay. So we'll get on with virtual tribes. I'm going to ask you a handful of questions and they are related to roles. And what I'd like you to do is, if you agree, I would like to see you really lean into the screen. So I really want to see your face if you agree with what I'm saying, just like Kwasi demonstrated there. Thank you. If you disagree and if it's a binary no, I want you to sit right back so I can hardly see you. Okay, don't disappear. We still want to see you, but just sit right back. Okay, so I'll start with the first question. Who here hates putting the bins out, but does it anyway? Yeah, I'm leaning in. I can see some people leaning in. I hate it. Yeah, that's an activity, right, that we've got to do. It has a function. There's a point of doing it. But yes, I can see there's lots of people that dislike putting bins out. And so we have Ben, who has a garbage chute. Lovely. I need one too. Maybe my husband could be it. I don't know. Okay, second question. Who here loves to play devil's advocate? Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I can see lots of people leaning in. And Kwasi's more laid back than ever there. Yeah. Okay. And so this is a way in which we might show up sometimes in our interactions. This is what we're going to be calling an inner role, and we're going to go on to explore that a bit further. Okay, third question from me. Who here loves to sing in the shower? Don't be shy. We have some people that sing in the shower. Brilliant, I'm not alone. Thank you. Welcome to my tribe, everyone.
Yeah, that was fun. Thank you.
I'm curious, and we can keep this brief because I am mindful of time. Has anybody noticed the way in which they've had to adapt a role or play a new role since we've got into this time of COVID? Feel free to share, or you can pop something in there.
The idea of coaching to a group of people I've never met without video, purely audio, but I can use like PowerPoints and or shared whiteboards was, first of all, I never believed was even possible, but I actually did it. So that was a weird and strange journey, although I still prefer in person. So that's what I've noticed.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Michael.
You can get stuff done without being in person. So maybe I'll be less arrogant about it in the future.
So there's something there in the way that you've shown up from time to time during this period. Okay, perhaps one more person?
I'm happy to share my experience. So I've basically transitioned in the fact that I used to train in person. I've seen some of my students, or one or two here, you know, and then also having to coach. And one of the things I've come to realize is the normal coffees that you used to have where you could banter and talk about things have changed, you know. I have a son who's 10 years old, he's autistic. And there's that empathy element in trying to understand when you're coaching people right now in COVID, you've got to understand where they're coming from and also where they are, you know. In as much as everybody's working from home, there's also the context that you are invading someone's home space and privacy. And so it's basically actually seeing a different perspective from how you used to coach, you know, and also trying to get the organization to see that not everyone has the ideal broadbands or the ideal scenarios to work from home perfectly. You could be juggling multiple kids and multiple things. And it so happened that earlier on in COVID, I had my partner's dad who was diagnosed and almost passed away, and I had to palpitate him for 45 minutes. And so that whole experience has shifted me in thinking about what is life really, and how do you actually relate to people? You know, what do we find valuable, you know, even as teams when we work with people? You know, do we see people as people, or are they just another number for on the paycheck, you know? And that really has influenced my coaching, and the pandemic actually has been what triggered that.
Wow, that's really beautiful, Daniel. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and I get it. I think there's been a massive shift in just treating people like humans over this period. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we will move on. I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 different types of roles. So the first one being an outer role. And an outer role, it's a little bit like that action of putting the bins out. So there's a doing element to it. It's functional. It's a job that needs doing, and it's very visible, and generally there can be a common understanding over what that role is. So if you think about an organizational chart, that is full of outer roles. Various people doing various jobs. As examples, we've got developers, scrum masters, CEOs. If we put a different spin on it, we could have a friend, a community leader, and all sorts of other things. So those are outer roles. And in a talk that, actually I've heard Kwasi talk about this, and I think you may have done this in one of your meetups. You talk about the cloak, don't you? And that's somebody actually wearing an outer role, I think. So inner roles. So inner roles are actually the way that we are being at a moment in time. This can be very transient. And it maintains the dynamics as well in relationships. So as an example, there's a couple that are in conflict, and actually there is something in the dynamics of that relationship which is creating conflict. And actually it's only when something in the roles, those inner roles, starts to shift that it might start to feel a bit freer and looser. It can be noticed by the way we are being, by the way that we are showing up. And so when we talked about the meta skills earlier, we're talking about the openness and the playfulness, and that's an inner role that we're playing and toying with there. So inner roles can be the visionaries, the initiators, the disturbers. The list is endless. And this is where things get really interesting, particularly when you're coaching teams, to see actually how is an inner role showing up and what impact is that having on others there in that space too. The third and final role is the hidden role. So the idea here, and I hope that image kind of captures this, is we're like a gemstone, right? And then we've all these different facets to us, and depending on what might be needed in the moment, we might just reflect in a particular way. But actually, some of that is really tucked down quite deep within us, and it takes some work to kind of make friends with that. The hidden role might start to bubble up and might start to manifest itself as an outer role. And there's various elements to this, and some of it we might be great friends with when we think about these different sub-personalities, like the protector self, the rebel, the shy self. And others we would rather not see, the jealous girlfriend, boyfriend self, who wants to know her, okay? So some of it we keep tucked away, and the more we start to understand our hidden roles, the more we can treat ourselves as a whole as well. Kwasi, you're on mute.
Yep, I just realized I was talking and then I had that thing flash up, your microphone might be on mute. I was just saying you might want to take a picture of this because it might come in handy in the next activities that we will be doing. And as Sati mentioned, Suzanne Doyle and myself did a similar talk around this at Genex thing last year, and we did a similar one for this meetup. So we will share the link to that if anyone is interested at the end with the recording as well. But just to add a couple of things to this, with regards to what we set up at the beginning, what Sadi said about the openness and the meta skills that we want to embody throughout the session. Adding to this, we talk about within the whole system and with the awareness of these roles, the outer, inner, and hidden roles, we talk about leadership belonging to the system. So it could be an outer role to start with, and it could be an inner role that someone steps into in that moment in time. So it belongs to the system. It is a shared responsibility, and sort of the roles are sort of transient. Transient in the sense of it shows up based on what is needed, and you either take the cloak from the inner role, or your inner role comes up and you kind of step into an exhibit. So different people occupying the same outer role, and they embody it very differently because of the personalities and the individuality that we all have. You might have one CEO might depart, another one comes in, and they act very differently, and you would have noticed it. And it's true for every other role, outer role, essentially, that we have. The other interesting point is about being curious about the roles that is showing up and really trying to understand and imagine what's trying to show up or what's trying to emerge. Essentially, because of a role acting up in the system, it is there for a reason. It is there to satisfy a cause, something that's needed. So the curiosity lines that we have, it's about being curious about whatever that is showing up and trying to get information and insight out of that. And yeah, just that the role show up and fulfill whatever is needed in that moment in time. Right, so we have something for you next, which we're going to use in the next breakout. So we're going to talk about a story. And this story is a real team scenario that I worked in, and I'm sure we can all resonate. So these are real scenarios, but different names and people. So meet Sam. So Sam, I'm going to give you the high bullet pointers. We've got the actual story for you that you would probably grab, and Ben will do some magic with the chat for you as well. But meet Sam. So Sam is a product owner. Sam is very busy with other parts of the business because the business has asked him to look at some other commitments. So he said yes to that. And by that virtue, Sam is not available much to his company. That's Sam. You'll have a little more detail around Sam in a sec. And then we have Lizzie. Lizzie is the Scrum Master for the team. By some notion, Lizzie is expected to manage the product backlog and communicate to all stakeholders including creating backlog items, product backlog items. So Lizzie, it's all on Lizzie. Lizzie is expected to facilitate all ceremonies needed to get going, or to get the team going and sprinting in that sense. And again, Lizzie is doing everything she can to bring everything together. So she's pretty much all over the place trying to rescue the ship. Meet Luke. Luke is a developer. Luke is pretty vexed about the situation, so he's quite vocal about everything that's going on. And he's not really offering any solutions other than just, complain about everything that's going on. So Luke is not happy. He's not happy bunny. And then we have Susie. Susie is also a developer. And based on the situation that's currently emerging, because Sam is not available, Lizzie is expected to create product backlog items and the whole lot. Susie has volunteered to create some backlog items that can get the team going because she's worked on a similar product in the past, so she can just create some stuff that will get us going. So that's the high level ticket items. These are all the roles that I've spoken about. This is the scenario. You might want to, if you love taking pictures, please take it. I think I would imagine Ben would have done his magic for us in the chat. So you will have the same.
I can copy it into the chat, no problem. And I can, when you go into rooms, I'll do the same.
Perfect, thank you. And then we're gonna give you the next set of instructions to work with. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kwasi. There's a lot happening in that story, right? Okay, we're going to go into a sprint retro now. So the team have been sprinting for a couple of weeks. They've had all this stuff to contend with during that time. So you're going to go into a breakout room in a moment. We'll give you about 10 minutes in that room, and you will be doing the retro, mad, glad and sad. So we're going to try and keep it simple for you. There is some instructions as well that we will be pasting into the chat just to make it really smooth, hopefully, when you get into that space. Remember the meta skills of openness and playfulness. So I invite you to pick an outer role that you'd like to play. You might want to be the PO, the Scrum Master, the developer. And choose an inner role as well that you want to play with, and try to pick something that you feel is kind of out of your comfort zone, something that might feel a little bit edgy. You can pick something in the scenario if you like, or you can choose something completely different. That's absolutely fine. What we would like you to do is to notice what comes up for you when you're seeing these outer and inner roles, possibly hidden roles, come up during the retrospective. And just notice how that feels to you during that space. Okay.
Welcome back, everyone. So we're going to do a debrief, a collective debrief together. I guess, what was the question? How was it? But just to normalize the fact that the emotions that hopefully showed up, if not, that's fine. The emotions that we have in these roles and everything that's playing up, it's okay. And it's the currency that we live in, it's the currency that we use. So it'd be good to hear some voices.
I was playing Grumpy Luke. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. So I was playing Grumpy Luke, and as soon as I said something negative, I think atmosphere in the group kind of sank down, and I didn't enjoy this role very much because I could feel that actually changed the atmosphere in the room. Negative comments. That was my observation.
I played Lizzie, Scrum Master. I ended up thinking, well, what can I do about the product owner? A bit annoying because Luke wouldn't engage and wouldn't do anything but moan.
Hey everyone, I was also a Scrum facilitator, and I thought, same as you, Robin, but what can I do? But there was a lot of meaningful work to do with the group. There's like roles and responsibilities missing. There was a lot of good tension to work through. So I think it makes the working with the disgruntled developer a little bit challenging, but meaningful work to do in that team.
I was playing the Lizzie as well on this occasion, and it felt like there was a lot of eyes turned to what the business was doing to the team from our group. The effective sort of we almost weren't being allowed to do the roles that we were supposed to be doing.
I'll just echo what we said because we're on the same team, and I've just seen also what Ali wrote there. While my intent was not to frustrate the teams as Grumpy Luke, I realized that it was quite an aggravating and very, very frustrating role. To think about that without wanting to blame the people, but then naturally blame them. So that was kind of the role of Grumpy Luke.
And we're curious, was there any conversation, I don't know if time permitted, was there any conversation around potential roles that were showing up, outer, inner, and potential hidden roles? I don't know if any of the group managed to get there or not.
Well, I tried to play one of, because Luke was annoying me and I was getting sucked into that, I started blaming outside and saying, well, it's management. So it's management telling the product owner to do other things, and that's not fair on the team. And so taking it away from any team tensions and just blame something outside of the team.
Okay. Right, okay. That's very good. Thank you, Ian. And with regards to the emotions that were showing up, I think I heard some of the emotions around frustration and Luke being Luke and Moni. What were some of the emotions that were showing up for you in your rooms?
I think for us, when we were playing a role we weren't comfortable with, there was laughter. So we diffused some of that discomfort through laughter. So we got kind of two different emotions there.
Yeah, from me, hi, I'm Lizzie, and it was very much a case of it was frustration, it was pressure constantly, because as the Scrum Master doing trying to maintain that backlog, trying to do all these things, it became a very much a point and a make fun of people. So unfortunately, Moni Luke did have a little bit of piss taken out of him.
Okay, and again,
if I may share, I felt like there was a sense of injustice done to the whole team. So that was what was going on inside me, a sense of injustice, because everyone was actually sucked into frustration, but from different perspective, and I felt injustice done to everyone. So I couldn't really sort of take things to my heart, as I am the only one suffering here, but I felt everyone was.
Go on, Maru.
Yeah, I'd like to share very quickly. I also thought we were in the Hunger Games because the team were tearing themselves apart in a very nice way, quality way, a very British way. But everybody in the system knew that the inner confrontation in the team is not the way to go, and it's the fault of nobody. It's just imposed on us by the situation, and we knew we should take a systemic approach to this and try to solve it from the outside instead of tearing each other apart. sorry guys, for being the nasty developer.
On the outside, everybody wanted to be the nasty developer.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Maru. And one last, and I'll turn it to Sati if there's anything else that Sati would like to check in with. But we're curious, was any of you thinking from the perspective of what is Nasty Luke trying to get here? What is Nasty Luke trying to get into or put into the system, or what is showing up in the system from a different perspective or different roles perspective? I don't know if any of that showed up for anyone or for the group. We're curious.
Sorry, Kwasi, can you repeat the question?
So remember before we went in, we spoke about roles show up based on what is needed to emerge in the system. So if Nasty Luke is being nasty, is he being nasty because he loves it, or was he being nasty because there is something that needs to be addressed and faced in? Was that perspective kind of considered, or was it just shut up, Luke?
I think for us, at any rate, or the way I came across with us, it was that there was a real problem there that did need addressing. And okay, he's quite a vocal individual, but nevertheless, there's some very valid points there that we need to take away and sort out.
Yeah, likewise. It was all down to at the end. We even came away with actions that we would work together to create a backlog and work as a collective team to provide that, to ease some of the workload off the Scrum Master, to ease some of the burden off of the product owner as well, to actually work together to create that backlog and maintain that backlog. And it seemed to be the feed of work and the lack of control around that was causing most of Luke's problems.
Yeah, we're curious. Go on, Dragon.
We haven't had a chance to discuss it, but I'm just thinking aloud here. It's a very powerful thing to actually genuinely ask people for their contribution and their ideas about what could be done. So Luke seems to be pointing at problems. What would happen if somebody, ideally Lizzie, instead of jumping at solutions herself, steps back and says, that's interesting, what would you suggest we should do? Or what do you think you could do to help with the situation? So inviting people in this space rather than occupying space, inviting Sam into the space as well.
Yeah, it's an inquiry, right? It's a space of inquiry and information. And how do we use that, or how do we gather that information without being either on the defensive or attacking anyone or blaming anyone, but really listening and being attuned to the roles that are showing up in that moment and leveraging that insight. Wonderful. Okay. Satya, I don't know if there's anything you want to inquire from the group. I was going to invite like a pause moment for if anyone wants to sort of capture anything key learning from this exercise. So for a minute for anything you want to jot down, the reflection point, and then we'll carry on.
I have a question. Playing the role of, grumpy Luke, could be a trigger based on what they've experienced before even going into the meeting, or what they have experienced in the meeting itself, and also the demands on them. So how do you basically identify whether it's, an outer role or an inner role? Because grumpy Luke may have just, done something basically that didn't work well, and then he's carried that frustration into that meeting, which is a retro, and so the only thing he's looking to do is, vent, so that's what he's doing right now, is just venting out. And sadly, whoever basically is closest to him at that point in time, within that time and that, opportunities, who he's venting to, that's what I basically could say, that, it could also be that grumpy Luke is not always grumpy, but then it just, something triggered something, there was a cause that made him grumpy also.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think it was a question and a statement at the same time. And
I don't know, I'm asking for your advice.
Right, okay, so grumpy Luke's outer role from the get-go, thing that we know him as, is a developer. And that's what his outer role is, by definition of a job title and everything else. So In that moment where he's showing up as the frustrated one, it is an inner role that has, in the moment, remember we spoke about the roles being transient, it's like a jacket you wear and then you let go. But in that moment of being frustrated, he's worn the jacket of frustrated Luke. So it's an inner role that has become an outer role for that moment. But if that inner role remains outer for persistent long length of time, then the system just gets a bit confused. So naturally, we know that Luke is not always a moany person, but something has triggered, as you said, triggered him, and his inner role of frustrated Luke has shown up in that moment. So it becomes outer, but it's only for a short period of time. And that's where we tap into that insight and really be curious about, interesting. Either we don't normally see Luke this way. What's underneath that? Yeah, and then use that in that moment. I don't know if there's anything you'll answer that, Sati. To that point.
Hi, Kwasi. I'd just like to comment that we've seen Luke in a sort of negative way, but it shows he's got lots of passion there. And all the stuff that gets aired is you know they're the golden nuggets that can help us rebuild.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much, Ben.
And I think the only thing that I'd like to add is that there's space for it all. There's space for Grumpy Luke to have a bad day. There's space for the Scrum Master to pick up some of the PO's work. And if we see it from a real helicopter view and think, okay, what's the intent, and get curious about it, then I think there's a wisdom there within that team space that can be tapped into to understand, okay, what's now needed.
Yeah. John, to your point, yes. Thank you, Sati, also for that. And Andy, the negative is not a bad thing. It's information, insight that we need to tap into. Okay, we're gonna crack on based on time. And hopefully you've had a chance to put something down as a reflective piece. We're gonna build on what we've just done with this exercise and go into the next activity. The next one that we're going to go into, I'll share my screen with everyone very quickly. We're going to go into a deep listening exercise, and I have something to share with you, not that, but that. I'm hoping we've all been in a scenario where we've been in a room with someone and we felt like whatever we are saying to that person, we feel so heard that we are the only person in the world with that person in that moment. I'm hoping we've all encountered and experienced those scenarios where the person is so engaged, listening to us all around, whatever we're saying, whatever our body movements is doing, everything, the environment and whatever is showing up, we feel so in tune. Hopefully you remember that. But what we're going to do next is a deep listening exercise to give our partners that will be in the breakout with us, so you'll be in pairs, that undivided attention. Yeah, we love this beautiful quote from Simone. She's a philosopher, Simone Weil, and she talks about attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. And what we're inviting you to do in the next exercise, we've got some prompts for you to help as well connect the thread of what we've just done in your own environments that you're in as well. But what we're inviting you to do is to give your utmost attention to the person that will be speaking with you for the next 5 minutes or 3 minutes, or however you choose to use the time that you both have. Yeah. Hopefully this will not be a challenge, but you might please take a picture, because this is essentially the activity. So in pairs, we're going to have 10 minutes for this, but you're going to be in pairs, I believe. You're going to take turns, and just when it's your turn, you can use the prompts here that we've got. But just start with what showed up for you in that previous exercise. It might lead from the debrief we've just done, but what showed up for you? And then just relate it to your current environment in terms of the learnings, the outer role, inner roles, hidden roles, all the conversations we're talking about, how this in your own environment potentially how things are showing up. What is your formal outer role? What function it fulfills, that outer role, the perspective that it brings to the team, what inner roles you might think you might be bringing up on occasions, and what it's trying to serve and give to the team essentially. So these are some prompts for you to use in that exercise. And all you do when it's your turn is just speak, and your partner will give you the undivided attention of generosity.
Okay, welcome back to this space. We hope you've enjoyed some time in pairs, listening to each other and just holding that space for each other, remembering that that's a completely confidential space. So we're going to go into another breakout shortly. But what I'd like you to do is just take one moment just to jot down anything that's come up for you that feels important right now based on what we've been exploring. You can see some very thoughtful faces. Okay. So what we're going to start doing is we're going to start to bring some of this new awareness into reality and into action, if you want. And we're going to practice something called action learning. Effectively, it's group coaching. Okay. So when we go into that breakout space, you're only going to have time to do one round of this, but you can practice it with your community at any point in time anyway. So action learning, there's going to be one person who will be the issue bringer, and that person will just talk for a couple of minutes about, that person's just going to talk for a couple of minutes about whatever it is that's come up for them in the previous exercise, uninterrupted, a couple of minutes. And then after that, the other participants are going to be asking some inquiring, open-ended questions, just to try and support the issue bringer in gaining a better understanding of whatever has come up for them. That might last a couple of minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes. And then finally, at the very end, those people that are playing the role of a coach, they will gift the issue bringer with something based on what they've heard. So it might be an idea, it might be some sort of a practice, an experience, an observation, a book, anything at all, but they will just gift one thing. Okay, so we're going to give you a 7-minute, we'll give you 7 minutes for the next exercise, and you will be sent off back into breakout rooms again. And when you return, we'll be wrapping up because we're mindful that we're going slightly over. Great, okay, so welcome back everybody. I hope you've had some good group coaching sessions. We're going to start wrapping up now, mindful of time. So we would like to give you a couple of takeaways. Some of this you may have noticed already from the work that you've been doing tonight. So first one, slow down. So when you're in those team situations and things are moving quite fast, the dialogue's quite fast, the interactions are going at speed, just hit a pause button and say, wow, what just happened there? When you notice that shift in energy, just hit pause and everybody just stop for a moment just to take stock of what's happened and what might be trying to happen in that moment as well. So notice the shifts in energy. We talk about an emotional field. People will interpret whatever's happening differently, but just noticing that and naming it can start to switch things around a little bit when we're working with roles. Also, get curious, and we've been doing quite a bit of that today as well. So starting to get curious around, wow, what was that? You know, what was the intent behind that thing showing up? Okay. So a few things that you can try out with your teams or in any system that you're part of for that matter. What we just about to finish, but what I'd like to just give a nod to as well. And as we were reflecting on this session, it was really zooming out and thinking about all the global matters that are happening right now. Some of those we've been part of, some of them might be very distant. And when I sat back and I thought about all the happenings around Black Lives Matter, around that movement, and for me that speaks of leadership. When we talk about leadership isn't in a role and it can apply to anybody, it's leadership for me in that role. for those people that are raising awareness, for those people that are protesting, for those people that want to have their voice heard. Those are voices of leaders. And I think about the wonderful work that Greta Thunberg's doing around climate change. It's like, wow, what an inspirational leader she is as well. And how about that? What if we all got on board with that and led in that way as well? How great would it be for us all? And then I was thinking about the Indian farmers that have been protesting for months around capitalism. And these are farmers that see to the land, and I can see somebody nodding there, Anna. And for me, those are leaders as well. So we might all interpret this differently. But fundamentally, when I was thinking around, well, whose role is it anyway to lead? I think it's a role for each and every one of us. And I'd like to invite you just to flick through your screens, however many participants we've got left at this stage, and just have a quick flick through and admire all those faces that we've got on screen. And I would really just like you to appreciate all of the roles that we all play in different contexts and all of the potential that we may have and that we are yet to discover, and how we might lead going forward as well. Okay, thank you very much for joining us this evening. If anybody wants to hang on for questions, then please do. Me and Kwasi will be available still. And if it's late and you just want to get away from your screen, that's absolutely fine too. Kwasi, is there anything else you want to say before we finish up?
I just wanted to say thank you for stepping into that inquiry space and having a go, being playful with it, and having us. We've really enjoyed shaping this for you. And thank you.